Asia-Pacic's data center sector faces a power shortfall, with electricity demand set to rise fivefold by the mid-2030s, putting grid capacity and energy security under pressure. To break down what this means, we have Will Symons of Deloitte and Chris Howard of JLL. Welcome, Chris and Will. So, how serious is the projected power shortfall compared with planned data center growth?
Asia Pacific is home to major data center hubs in China, Japan, and Singapore, with Australia, India, and Malaysia emerging as significant markets as demand for storage, analytics, and processing accelerates. Data center electricity consumption in Asia Pacific could grow from under 200 terawatt hours today to more than 1,000 terawatt hours by the mid-2030s. The region's electricity demand is projected to rise almost 50% over the next 10 years as businesses and households switch from liquid fuels to electrons and economies continue to grow. Electricity is projected to increase from 20% of the region's final energy demand now to 45% in 2050. This new growth is straining our grids and comes at a testing moment for Asia Pacific's energy systems. Governments are signatories to the Paris Climate Agreement and are navigating complexity in trying to decarbonise their power grids, requiring huge new investments in transmission, distribution, and storage. So it's against this backdrop that data centres are seeking new sources of supply.
Ultimately, we're creating more data, and the way that data is stored and used is changing. AI is going to be representing 50% of all data capacity by 2030, up from 25%, and it's just going to dramatically increase and accelerate electricity demand. JLL's latest research predicts that global data center capacity is going to nearly double by 2030, from 103 gigawatts up to around 200 gigawatts. And APAC will expand from 32 gigawatts to 57 gigawatts.
But just to expound on that, which Asia-Pacific markets would you say are most exposed to grid constraints and price volatility?
Data centres require massive amounts of power to keep them running. Across Asia-Pacific, the rapid growth of data centres is adding pressure to already strained electricity grids. In the past, facilities could connect relatively quickly into local grids, but connection delays are now common as governments and system operators grapple with spiking energy demand. Projections for data centre power needs are sometimes well outpacing plans to augment local grids. For example, the estimated pipeline of data centre projects in Tokyo is more than double the planned expansion of electricity supply in that region to 2030. In Southeast Asia, the ADB notes that the region is not prepared for the accelerated pace of the clean energy transition due to insufficient interconnectivity and limited grid capacity, leading to inefficiencies that constrain renewable deployment. Energy storage and system flexibility remain underdeveloped at scale. This constrains the ability of Southeast Asia to benefit from the investment in data centres because of a lack of access to power. In India, even as solar and wind projects continue to be announced at scale, grid congestion and slow interconnections are a risk to India's renewable build-out and the ability of data centres to access sufficient power. Moving power from where it be produced cheaply to sources of demand in a cost-effective way will be critical. In Japan, the issues are similar. Grid connection difficulties, output curtailment, insufficient transmission capacity, and market design are all reducing renewables grid penetration at a time when energy inputs are under pressure due to supply chain disruptions. In terms of price volatility, data centres require large volumes of secure, reliable, and competitively priced power. The rapid explosion of electricity demand at a time when grids are already being reconfigured to integrate renewable energy threatens the supply and price crunch if left unaddressed. Energy represents around 60% of data centres' operating expenses, so it's critical to the data centre business model in coming years due to constrained and volatile supply.
We're seeing energy constraints being a real risk for markets like Singapore, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sydney, Seoul. Grid connection times in those cities are either matching or exceeding those in EMEA's most constrained markets. Okay, on average, it's about 4 years in tier 1 markets, Tokyo up to 10 years. So in some APAC markets, bring your own power is becoming an industry expectation.
So what's its effect? How is the shift to a power-first model changing investment and site selection strategies?
The Power First model fundamentally rewires both investment logic and site selection decisions for data centers. Instead of treating electricity as a downstream utility connection, energy becomes the primary constraint that shapes where, how, and with whom projects are developed. Investment decisions are anchored to secured, long-term access to clean and cost-effective power. Energy contracts associated with PPAs, on-site generation and storage become core financial assets. In this context, energy assets and data centers should be treated as an integrated portfolio, viewing renewables, storage, plus compute as complementary components of one investment stack. Returns are optimized through lower power price volatility, improved bankability, and diversified revenue, with the potential for data centers to participate in energy arbitrage and demand response markets. So site selection moves from near demand to near power. Traditional site selection prioritized latency, land availability, and proximity to customer. Power First flips this logic. Sites are selected based on where clean power can be delivered fastest, cheapest, and at scale. In some cases, it's cheaper to move data than electrons, leading to geographic decoupling of compute and end users. The implication of this is that non-traditional locations with strong solar, wind, or hydro resources become candidates for data center development. It also implies that we'll see a structural shift towards clean energy data zones, where data centers are clustered near renewable resources and existing grid capacity, where governments co-invest in shared infrastructure, and where site selection becomes a multi-stakeholder exercise involving grid operators, energy developers, governments, hyperscalers, and data center developers.
So the Power First model is fundamentally re-engineering data center development from a linear process to almost a reversed power-centric methodology, where secured electrical capacity defines all downstream decisions. Driven by AI-accelerated demand, this approach really treats power as the primary constraint. It's moving site selection from connectivity-led hubs to energy-abundant hubs and forcing to pay for that upfront power.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Will and Chris. Hope you can both join us again soon.
Great to be here. Thank you.
It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you for the time, and great to speak to your audience today.
Once again, those were Will Symons, Asia-Pacific Sustainability Leader at Deloitte, and Chris Howard, Head of Account Management in Data Centres and PMO for Asia-Pacific at JLL. For more news, visit asian-power.com.